And they go, you know what, James, a bit controversial. I quite like Donald Trump. I said, it's not controversial. You're told it's controversial, so you're basically told to keep quiet. And the proof was when the voting came out, we saw what happened. Another one would be a lot of these women, they've broken up their husbands, hate men, and will project that onto their kids, and they'll try and remove any masculinity from their boys. Whenever a woman says, I'm a strong, independent woman, I don't need a man, that's a cry for help to me. That's not, to me, it is a cry for help. No woman that actually genuinely is healthy and strong will say that. It's the same as me. Whenever I hear a woman saying that, I'll go, I'm a strong, independent man, I don't need a woman. And they burst out laughing and I go, that's exactly what you sound like. You sound like an idiot. If you're someone that is not capable of violence and you're always kind, the nice guy, you're not really nice. You're just pathetic.
Before we dive into this episode, I want to ask you to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. It helps keep growing the channel and keep getting fantastic guests like this one. James, welcome to the show, and we made it happen while I'm here in Dubai.
Glad to see you. Thank you for having me on.
And there's so many different areas that we could start, given the different conversations that you and I have had over the last 6 months since we get connected on Instagram, and I've been really looking forward to this. But having got to know your story, your perspectives, I think you strike me as a man that has a really high level of resilience, and that's a character trait that I feel is missing in modern men.
Definitely. Definitely is missing.
Why do you think that's the case?
Well, actually, I've thought about this a lot. The real reason is because people don't like to admit it, but it's because 50% of households, I want to get the exact number right, but 50% of households have split homes. So 50% of the population brought up by mums, and mums don't understand men. Mums will project how they feel as women onto men. And that's not that, they're well-intentioned. But unfortunately, telling men how to behave from a woman's point of view doesn't work. And they feel emotions differently. Another one would be a lot of these women, they've broken up their husbands, hate men, and will project that onto their kids, and they'll try and remove any masculinity from their boys.
Yeah, that negative experience with a man has shaped how they see all men, and that is filtered down to the child. So that resilience that we would typically associate with positive expressions of masculinity is being stripped throughout the childhood, and I would probably argue the schooling system as well.
Yeah, it goes on the schooling system as well. And another one would be men they have a mum at home. What's their masculine role model? They go to school and they have a woman teacher as well. And the issue is, like we said before, they have no masculine role models, and how they don't understand what it feels like to be in the world as a man. And I think the only way you can do that coming from a single parent household is to put your child through something difficult. And if you have a good amount of money, you're not going to just throw out a strip and starve them, right? The best way to do that is put them through sports, because no matter how much money you have, put them through sports and they'll learn to be strong. Like, my parents are both dentists. I came from a middle-class family, went to a private school, didn't have a hard upbringing. I'm not going to give you a sob story about that. Wasn't bullied at school. I had plenty of friends at school. But the issue was, what I had to do, put through rugby and martial arts. No matter how much money your parents have, you still have to work hard to become good at something.
I was going to ask straight away, because if I look at the people that I spend a lot of time with, there are some commonalities, and there's areas that I really respect about them, and a lot of it can be things like a sporting background. What do you put down the level of resilience you have to? Is it that initial schooling in BJJ at such a young age?
Yeah, so 100% will be to do with, look, I'm also very lucky. My mum is Japanese, she's not English. I think that's a big thing, Asian background. My parents, the good thing about my parents were they're very hardworking. I saw that from a young age. So the problem is what we have, sidetrack. A lot of people now in the UK and London in particular come from a lot of family wealth. We're not talking about family wealth, middle class parents. We're talking about 2 generations, 3 generations of wealth. So the parents don't even work hard. They have a lot of property that's gone up in value. The issue you have at the moment, Colin, is really simple. You have people that call themselves entrepreneurs. They bought houses a long time ago that went up in value. They're not entrepreneurs. They're lucky.
They ruled the property market.
Yeah, they ruled the property market, and it went up in value. They became wealthy. And the problem is, a lot of people our age will have parents and didn't really work that hard, and they see their parents basically have loads of money, and then they become entitled as well. So the cut back, basically, the reason why I think I'm resilient is because my parents worked hard. They instilled work ethic into me from my age, and they also said to me, no one's going to come to help you. It's just the way it is. And playing sports is one of the biggest things. So going to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu young, I started Jiu-Jitsu when I was 14 or 15. Played rugby beforehand. Went to a place where you go in. I was pretty strong in the gym, played rugby at school, and thought I'd be tough. I walked in, got beaten the crap out by absolutely everyone. I always tell the story of a guy, Gerald, who's a taxi driver, built like a stick. just beat the crap out of me. I remember and thinking to myself, like, what even is this? I'm not that tough. And you have two options, Colin. You either become that person that pretended it never happened and walk back out again, or you go, I need to actually learn this and become better. And I think that's a personality trait, because you have loads of people that go to jiu-jitsu or any martial art, boxing gym would be, right? They go and everyone gets beaten up first time. You have an option. You either go and learn or you keep going back, or you pretend it never happened. And I think that's with everything in life. You pretend it never happened or you grow from it, right?
Yeah, or you disregard. You're like, that's not even something I care about anyway. It doesn't matter. I'm going to opt out. And that's something that's happening a lot in modern society. Anytime somebody encounters something they maybe don't have a level of ability at initially, they just withdraw entirely and they disregard it as a field that matters. And I find it's there's the whole concept of like retreating to the inner citadel. You build up these walls and you say that anything outside of it doesn't matter, and you just exclude things outside of your walls that you initially find challenging or find a struggle. And that is a terrible position to be in. And that's why I think we have a lot of very weak men in particular who've just disregarded all these different metrics and things that we know are important over time, and instead have kind of built up these walls around it and said only the things within this domain are the things that matter and the things that are really important.
Colin, you actually put it better than I could. So what's happened is about people becoming weaker, men and women. What they've done is we understand how the hierarchy works in terms of men. We're going to just go through men. There's no point women. With men, the hierarchy for men, how women select men, is built on physical toughness and earning money, or basically having supply. So today it's money, right? So those two attributes, what people do instead of actually working at those and improving at those, they disregard them and they cut them down. So instead of climbing the hierarchy, like good men do, they disorder the hierarchy. So what they'll do, the far left have done, is they'll see someone in shape with money, they see the guy in shape with a Ferrari, they go, I'm not impressed by that. They'll belittle that person. Instead of actually progressing and trying to climb the hierarchy to just as good as that person or becoming as good as that person, they disregard that person and socially ostracize them. So actually, funny enough, that's how women fight. So the way men fight, traditionally, will be to literally physically fight or get better than that man, or they become your friend and they're in your pack. What men have done nowadays is become more like women, socially ostracize someone. So women, the hierarchy is built on different metrics. Most of it is being able to bring up a family, being kind, being gentle, and intelligence part as well, and looks. So what they do, if they're threatened by another woman, what they'll do is they'll socially ostracize that woman.
Reputational damage is key.
Reputational damage. They'll go, that woman's a whore, she's a slut, she's this, and they'll whisper to each other, right? If they see them as a threat. Unfortunately, that's what men are becoming. So men are becoming more feminized and starting, instead of fighting like good men among each other and climbing the hierarchy, they socially ostracize that person and that reputationally damage them.
Yeah, I think you see that online in particular nowadays. And while you mentioned somebody that drives the Ferrari, that's like the extreme end of the wealth spectrum. But belittling the pursuit of financial success or financial stability is something I've found particularly distasteful in the UK in recent years. And I think it's getting worse under a Labour administration. And you and I have both spoken before, we're no friends of the current guys of the Conservative Party who have very much sold out to the globalist narrative.
They're not a Conservative Party, they're a leftist party.
Yeah, they are. The last few years. Globalist shills, really. Yeah. But the narrative around the pursuit of success and the pursuit of financial increase and financial stability and the ability to provide, which we're going to speak about from a masculine perspective, that's belittled, as you say. And that is why the UK is in such a sorry state of affairs, because if you strip away the kind of biological desires of the both sexes, we end up in this kind of mishmash random area.
Yeah, well, what's happened is the way they've got away with it, you know, you can sit talk about what's going on behind closed doors, but the real reason they get away with it is very simple. So we're in this situation because of house prices, and hear me out. What's happened is, give an example, I talk about this a lot, but my dad bought a family home for £100,000 in today's money, $120,000, if you don't understand British pounds. That was in today's money, so it was less before, but in today's money, £100,000. Yeah. So I said, Dad, what was your salary back then? And he said, £100,000. What's the house worth now? £1.5 million. So, and he's a dentist. So salaries have stayed the same for dentists, around 100,000, pretty less actually, NHS. He's a private dentist, so 100,000. And house prices have gone up 15-fold. So house prices have gone up 15 times versus salaries. So the system is completely broken. So what's happened is people can't afford to have a normal life anymore. If you have a very good job, the top 1% of earners, £100,000 a year, okay? You can afford, in London, you can probably afford a studio flat at most. So this idea that you literally go to work, you work hard, go to university, you tick the boxes, you go and work in an investment bank, you earn a good salary. Well, you're still probably living at home with your parents. I have loads of friends from school, Colin, that are surgeons and live at home with their parents. And their parents are Indian immigrants, Pakistani immigrants, who put all their money together for kids, and the kids are poorer than their parents because the parents have a property.
They were sold the dream. Yeah, that's right. And you were speaking, I heard you speak before in a podcast about your dad was Irish and your mum was Japanese, and they had that kind of hardworking immigrant mindset to put the kid through private school, to give you the best opportunities. And that was the immigration that we had then, and we can maybe speak about the immigration we have now. That bred a generation of really hard-working people, like you say, surgeons that have come from a foreign country. They've built their way up, and their family are really proud of them. But fiscally, it hasn't actually delivered on the promises that were promised to us. So, like the opposite of the American dream, we had this UK dream where you go through the school system, you go to university, you get the job, and then you should have the wife, the kids, and the mortgage. But that's now being pushed later and later, or not at all now.
Not at all, because if you're 35, the average house owner is 36, and you're 35, 36. Wow. So the problem with that is, this is the problem, that unless your parents have money to give to you, you're done. And even if your parents do have money to give to you, 40% is taxed. So it's gone anyway. So we'll go into that in a minute about Labour government. But the point being anyway is the American dream. So the reason why this happened in the UK, people become very jealous and envious, belittle people that succeed, is because people don't want other people to have what they can't have or think they can't have. If you believe, an example would be, if I believe I can get the Ferrari, I can do well, etc. I love it because I'm like, you know what, I can do that. If I believe I can be physically strong and I can do it myself, I love someone being strong. But people believe they can't have the British or American dream or Western dream anymore because they can't. So instead of actually climbing and trying to be better, now they just become jealous and angry at anyone that does well. And that's what's happened in the UK.
Yeah, it's so negative. And I do a solo podcast every 10 episodes where I get questions from the listeners on Instagram and on my email list. And a lot of the questions are around, do you feel like you're an outlier? Do you feel like you're surrounded by people that are doing badly? Or with the negative atmosphere in the UK, like, how are you able to stay? And I use the phrase, like, the world's on fire, but life is good. So, for example, if I look at my close circle, a lot of us have done better over the last 3-4 years, despite looking around and being like, whoa, the world's actually going a bit mad. And actually the cost of living, and we can talk about why that is getting worse and worse and worse. But I feel like my life has improved because I've had a lot of agency to try and do that. Now, I'm from a background that has enabled me to do that in the same way as you. I didn't go to a private school, but I felt I had a very secure upbringing from both mum and dad, and I had a good platform to build on. But if I look at that and I think, oh, my life's gotten better, but everywhere I look around me, apart from the people that I spend the most time with, it's actually not. It's getting far worse. Like you say, 36 years old buying your first house, that's ridiculous. That's so challenging.
Normal, but it's not okay, right?
It's not okay. I was 26 when I bought my first property with my brother. No help from mum and dad to do that. But that is an outlier in the circumstance that we're talking about. And while the property market further north is definitely better than London, it's still challenging to see some of the prices. I've got a friend who's very, very successful. He just bid for a flat. He's done incredibly well. He works he has a drop shipping business and he does mad revenue. He just bid something like 30% over the home report for a flat in Glasgow. And he was like, the woman just was like, no, you're not even close. That we've just inflated our currency out of all value. Like, where are we going with this?
Well, what's happened is, Colin, people could go to me, they're like, how can who affords these properties? And I go, it's very, very simple. What's happened is huge amounts of foreign investment has come in, particularly London. Yeah. So I'm talking about London. London, the reason why you look at people and have this, 1% population of 100 grand, right? And they can't afford anything. So who buys the property? The fact is foreign investment. What they've done, the British government, the Conservative government, have let huge amounts of foreign investment come in from countries that are very corrupt. They have huge amounts of disparity of wealth, Russian oligarchs, etc. Million billionaires from China park their money, dodgy money, in the UK in property. And that's made unaffordable to most people, unless you're on the property ladder. From the property ladder, you become a millionaire overnight, or the last 20, 30
years.
As it grows, right? But if you're not on the property ladder, say your parents come from not that much wealth, and then literally you don't have that much wealth, etc., you're stuck. You're not going to be able to get on the property ladder anymore. And people have jumped on the property ladder now. I'm like, you're making the worst mistake ever. You're literally jumping on the wrong time. Really, the time was, as far back as possible, right?
Yeah, because then you would benefit from the gains that we just kind of inflated out of nowhere.
And people have drawn all their money out the UK now. Well, London has the biggest exodus of millionaires, second to China. But China has 1.2 billion people. The UK has 70 million. So the highest per person exodus of millionaires in the whole world. And people say the UK is not that bad. You're deluded. You're burying your head in the sand. The direction it's going is not, it's not that bad now. but it's the direction it's going is a very serious problem.
The trend's a massive problem, and you're out here in Dubai partly because of that.
The main reason I'm in Dubai, it was loads of different reasons. I'd say number one, well, obviously the tax type of thing, but remove that. If I was still paying tax here, the same as the UK, I'd still be here. The quality of life is better. People are happy here. People are more friendly here. People like success here. And as much as, Colin, it's fashionable to make fun of the US, the Americans are very different. And the proof, the last election, British people and European people keep going on about the Americans, go, oh, you know, it's crazy. Look at social media. There was all this far left movement. I said, that's social media. That's not the truth.
And it's the size of the country as well. So
Oh, yes,
1% of 52 states, you have so many people. So you're obviously going to have some people that are like crazy outliers, and
Yeah.
social media amplifies the most
extreme
elements.
of both. So
Yeah.
the most extreme far left and far right, someone in the middle, which is what most people are. They didn't shout and scream. And the proof of the election was the polling looked like Donald Trump and Kamala Harris were even. I knew as soon as the polling was even, Donald Trump would win because people stay quiet. You're
Shy
told,
conservatives.
yeah, because you're told you're bad. If you said, quite often you've had this, right? I've had friends who have lawyers, bankers, surgeons, you know, housewives, just normal people, and they'll go, and they go, you know what, James, it's a bit controversial. I quite like Donald Trump. I said, it's not controversial. You're told it's controversial, so you're basically told to keep quiet. And the proof was when the voting came out, we saw what happened.
Yeah, I think that was a huge result, and I do feel the last few weeks have been a lot lighter. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I feel great, literally. I've actually, every morning I wake up, black coffee, look out into the sunlight, literally with my MAGA hat on.
And you're feeling better for things. Yeah, I certainly think that's been the case. But where we've got a situation where the UK has just elected a Labour government with a large majority, the alternative to that is a Conservative Party, which doesn't hold true to any of the values that I would associate with conservatism that I grew up potentially being more inclined to support. It feels more challenging. We don't have potentially a Trump figure. So you are seeing, as you say, the exodus of millionaires, even the exodus of people who aren't millionaires but have
Middle class people,
aspirations to be a millionaire. And you are right about Dubai. If I came here and paid the same tax that I pay in the UK, which at points is over 50% on my PAYE income through my day job, I would be still happier because I feel like I'd be getting more for my money. Whereas the taxation that I pay to the UK government, I don't feel like they're spending it in alignment with the things that I would like them to spend on.
I like you said, there's nothing wrong with tax if they're using the money correctly and aligned with what you want or what the people want. And it's funny you said that. It's not aligned with what the people want. So you said about the majority. It's really interesting. So my business partner, Giuseppe, said to me, goes, you know what? You know, what's going on in the US? I'm not sure about the British people because they think obviously very different. I said, they don't. The fact is, actually, the reason why the Labour government got in, people's views moved further right, not further left, further right. What happened was more people moved from the Conservative Party, quite rightly. They were unvotable. They're not the Conservative Party of old. Moved to vote Reform. And what they did was split the vote. People's views have moved further right. Labour actually had the lowest turnout ever. That's the funny thing. They
Starmer had less votes than Corbyn. Insane.
Corbyn, who I know people love him now because of the Palestine stuff. Let's remove this stuff. Israel-Palestine stuff. Remove that part. The guy's an absolute Fruit Loop. He's a lunatic. He's a full-blown communist. The reason why people would stop voting Labour is people were petrified of Labour. The Tony Blair types, the people I know would vote Labour, would never vote Labour again because of him. They're so scared of someone like Corbyn getting in. And what happened was people weren't voting the Labour Party. Actually, what happened was the Conservative Party were unvotable and they moved to Reform. Labour Party didn't get voted. They did get voted in. This is the way it works.
That's right.
But they don't have a majority. People don't want Keir Starmer. And then even people who voted him that thought he was centrist realised after they voted him, the guy's... I wouldn't even call it a Fruit Loop. He's a very intelligent man. He's actually a bad person.
Well, that's something that's interesting because a lot of the time, when we can maybe talk about some of the conspiracies which have come to become predictions or at least solid theories, people dismiss what is malevolent as either ignorance or stupidity, and I actually don't think that Starmer falls into the ignorant or stupid camp. I think he is malevolent in terms of I think he has an agenda that he's following from above potentially, and it's leading us down a path which is really, really challenging, where some people are like, oh, surely he doesn't think that, or that's just a silly mistake, and you're thinking, well, no, like the reason that Rachel Reeves is enacting these policies and making it worse for small business owners is to crush the middle
we don't
class.
exist. So we don't exist.
And that is a desirable state because it's much more easy to control a population that is reliant on the state heavily. And then you
Hand to
have
mouth.
this. Yes, exactly. You have the super wealthy who are completely untouchable,
Attached anyway.
Exactly.
The money's offshore anyway.
unaffected. And then you have all the people in the middle who are actually the important voting bloc and the important people that really drive the country to some extent. And if they are crushed of their spirit and their financial spending power and their ability to enact change, then you have a very easy to control populace.
Correct. And that's exactly what happened. What happened is you're crushing the middle class to the point that they're, like you said before, have nothing left in them. And their only option is to give more control back to the government again and again. And of course, it's the narrative. And the Keir Starmer thing you said, if you think Keir Starmer is stupid, you have an IQ of a cracker. You literally have no idea. You haven't looked into Keir Starmer. You don't realise who he is. Keir Starmer is an incredibly capable person, right? But he's a bad person. There's a big difference. Keir Starmer was the top QC in the whole country, top barrister in the whole country. And you know this anyway. He comes from nothing and is very successful. Respect him for doing that. I respect him, and I think he's a clever person. However, he's a bad person. Think of this idea, confusing the two, thinking he's stupid, etc., etc. You're completely delusional.
Yeah, exactly.
You're deluded.
Exactly that. It's funny we talk about the middle class because I studied politics at the University of Glasgow 2010 to 2014, and in 2010 we had the election that had just come to pass. I'd started in September. We'd had the election where Cameron and Clegg went into coalition.
Yeah.
Now they were up against Ed Miliband, who by all accounts is a buffoon. I think he's a buffoon.
realised that recently.
I think he's a buffoon, but he's also ideologically captured by the climate crisis movement as well. Now, Ed Miliband had one phrase that stayed with me, and he talked about the squeezed middle. And he was actually right about this. The middle class in the UK, since I would probably argue early 2000s, has just been squeezed into all oblivion, and the kind of standard of living of the middle class has gotten objectively worse because of the spending power. And we've seen diversion between those at the very lowest end of the spectrum and those at the very, very highest. And that was the only thing that I will credit Ed Miliband with. But the middle has been squeezed beyond all recognition. And those are the people that I have the most sorrow for, because they do sign up to if I can get my child to university for the first time. Like, I was the first child in my family to go to university. My brother then followed me, and my parents were very proud of that.
Noble, hard-working people. Right?
Exactly. That is social mobility. That's the ability to go from middle class to upper middle class and to maybe have a bit more income. But that's being stripped away from us, and I find that really challenging.
Well, the way it worked is, you know about the American dream. I believe we had the most incredible country in the world for social motility. In terms of, say you're intelligent, but your parents have money, you go to grammar school, you'd get education, private school fees, not private school fees, sorry. University fees were £3,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right, you get a student loan, wasn't that much. You go to university, you get a good job, you pay the student loan back because you had a good job, you're earning plenty of money in the city, or wherever it may be. You buy a house, it goes up in value. Your wife maybe has a good job as well. She joins you, 2 incomes. You buy a nice house together, have kids, etc., etc. And then you didn't go to private school. Kids went to private school. Move on from there.
You feel like you're making a step forward.
Yes, but the fact is, people need to take this on the chin. The truth is, our age group. I'm 34. How old are you?
32.
Same sort of age. Our generation, our age, are doing our quality of life has moved back massively. Not even a bit, massively. And the issue we have, moving on to that, is we'll talk about this and about dating, what's been going on, what people look for. But it's a mess, because what's happened is what women are looking for in a mate is delusional, actually. And what's happened is a lot of women have ended up miserable. A lot of men have ended up miserable. And you've basically destroyed the family values. You'd have no families left. And men and women together are strongest. And they become enemies of each other.
That's something I think is always really important, that when somebody like you or I speak about masculinity and we speak in defense of men and we want to encourage, it's because we want there to be unity and success as a partnership.
Correct.
Whereas I think somebody could clip some of the things that we're going to say during this conversation out of context and think, oh, they're just ranting about how unfair it is for men nowadays. But you and I were sharing some stats. You shared a Chris Williamson post. We were speaking before I hit record. Chris, my first episode, I have a huge respect for what he's done with Modern Wisdom, and I think he is a massive advocate for men. But many times when he has these conversations, he has to caveat at the start that he says, it's not easy for women in the modern society as well, because there's these issues. And then he gets to talk about how hard it is for men. But in order to have that conversation about how hard it is for men, you need to have all these caveats at the start about women. And that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to just go straight into the conversation that, for example, I think one of the stats that was shared was that suicides in men under 30 have risen by 40% since 2010. There's a reason for that. It's systematic failure from the elites to look after the male populace.
Well, of course they haven't, because the truth is, women still look at men as breadwinners. They're not anymore, but they want men to do well. Women marry up Always. All women I know. So that's not people will go back and forth.
It's hypergamy.
It's normal. It's the way women are. All women I know firsthand want a man that does better than them. And that might not just be financially. That might be in terms of intelligence, whatever it is, educational status, whatever it may be, right? And the problem is men are doing less well than women. And the reason for that is complex. But the point is, back to about the, I was talking about a second ago, sorry, it was about, women and men. It's about Chris Williamson having to say, oh, actually women also find it difficult too. I actually feel sorry for men that have to do that. I've never done that before. I don't apologise for somebody else, then caveat it. Because it's this simple. If somebody goes, I like apples, and then they go, but what about oranges? I never said I dislike oranges.
That's the online world though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The comment section will always do that. I don't spend a lot of time there, but my clips editor repurposes my stuff from Instagram and YouTube Shorts onto TikTok. Wow, that's a shock to the system because it's a lot of what I would call male apologists on there.
Male apologists, the worst.
And they're very, very quick to jump on me, alt-right podcast bro, and I'm thinking, I'm not alt-right, like I'm just right of centre on a lot of social and fiscal views, and I'm actually pretty open-minded on a lot of stuff as well.
No, you're probably what you'd actually call what liberal used to be. Liberal is
I'm certainly a libertarian. I would say from that perspective. I find it really funny to watch, and you were mentioning there that it's like you could argue that women have it easier in today's society in some senses, and to have to caveat that is really, really negative. But I was looking into some of the stats, and in terms of US college campuses, which are a great way to shape out who's going to be successful in the future, there's actually more gender inequality now than there was in 1972 when Title IX was introduced, which helped to support women to get better access to education. But the discrepancy this time is the other way around. Men are massively underrepresented on college campuses in the US, and that will have a lead time and a tail to it, which will mean that men, as you say, will not be able to provide in the same way that traditionally they have or evolutionarily they have for women, because women will have better education, they learn more, and they will have a pool of men they look to pick from that they find less desirable than ever before.
Well, it's exactly what you just said there. It's not relevant who's doing better, who's doing worse. This whole conversation is void anyway, because if men are doing worse, we have a worse society anyway. Yeah. Women do worse without strong men. Women doing worse is bad for men as well. It's not really relevant. This is the whole point. We have having a world where men are doing less well, have a massive suicide rate in men. Men are not doing as well. Men are becoming weaker. Men are becoming less capable. The whole world does worse, men and women, because men and women need each other. It's not saying women need men need women. Whenever a woman says, I'm a strong, independent woman, I don't need a man, that's a cry for help to me. That's not, to me, it is a cry for help. No woman that actually genuinely is healthy and strong will say that. It's the same as me. Whenever I hear a woman saying that, I'll go, I'm a strong, independent man, I don't need a woman. And they burst out laughing and I go, that's exactly what you sound like. You sound like an idiot. You sound like an idiot. It's not relevant.
Partnership matters. It really does.
We need each other. It's insane. I don't hate women. Women shouldn't hate men. It's not natural for us to do it. It doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I think it's really challenging, and I've seen your comment sections before where people have had arguments with you back and forth, and you've spoken about the situation that you had with your ex-wife. And sometimes it's important to bring these stories to the table to actually contextualize, because there is the whole like, oh, but he must be a woman hater from that perspective, but it couldn't be further from the truth.
No, I don't hate women. This is the thing. So my funny enough, I haven't really had. You know what? Anyone that knows me slightly has never said it to me ever, literally. Ever. I've never had any actual negative comments to women going, you'd hate women. Because women are the thing that I respect them massively for. Women have, because of the DNA physically weaker, they're incredibly aware emotionally. So they can read the difference. And there is a big difference between someone saying something and someone else saying something, but where it comes from. I know men go, what do you mean? It's the way, this way you said it. They're right. It is the way someone says something, right? So I've said stuff, literally like, men and women different. I believe women have their place, men have their place. No one's ever said to me you're a misogynist ever. Because it obviously doesn't come from that kind of place. Whereas some guys say they do mean it from a bad place. They just do.
Of course.
It is different.
You can tell the difference.
You can tell.
That's great. Tonality and where it comes from.
Yeah, it does come from. So an example would be, right, me saying that women want a strong man that can provide for them. That's not to belittle women. It is what women want. Some men are saying that from a control's perspective. They are. And some men saying, I want to provide and protect women. Some men are being controlling, versus some men are genuinely being good men and go, I want to provide for my family. They're the same statement, but they can come from different places.
Yeah, that is totally different. I guess from your own story and perspective, then you were married at a very young age.
Well, not crazy young. I forget how old I am now. I got married at 29, which I suppose is actually relatively young for our generation.
For this era, yeah.
Yeah. So I got married. she was having an affair with someone at work. We broke up, cut a long story short. Moved back to my parents, and that was it really. And then built my business from there, etc. But the point is, anyway, I can hand on heart say it never made me hate women at all, like zero. Just went, that didn't work. That's it. Like, it didn't make me hate. So I actually find it, I'll be very blunt, pathetic for men and women. I will use that word strongly. I never use it. Pathetic for men and women when they have a partner cheating them or something bad happens between the opposite sex and they hate all that sex. It's just insanity.
It's painting everyone with tarring everyone with the same brush.
But it's a weakness and it's an insecurity. It's actually it's building up walls to protect yourself. Fear of being rejected, right? So if you have a good sense of self, you're like, well, it didn't work with her. It's fine. Same with women. They say their husband cheats and they mess them around, whatever it may be, even hit them, whatever it is. All men are women beaters. That's just not true. By data, it's not true. So you can look at factual data. It's not true. Yeah. So women saying that and saying they hate all men after that, and then they destroy. You know what the truth is, though, Colin? I don't feel sorry for these people. They end up destroying themselves in the end. You hating all of the opposite sex, hate all men. Cool. Congratulations. Be alone the rest of your life. Let's see in 15 to 20 years if you're the happy one. Men, I hate all women. All women are whores. All women are this. Cool. Okay. Let's see you in 15 to 20 years. And guess what? No good man or no good woman will go out with you because of your attitude. What do you expect to attract if I hated all women? What do you expect to attract? Like, it's craziness. Oh, all women are whores, women this. I'm like, there's no good women out there. What do you expect to attract?
Yeah, you're putting that out into the universe in a woo-woo terms, but I completely agree with that. And somebody who's gone through a circumstance like that, like yourself, I think there is more opportunity for somebody to understand if like once burnt, twice shy. So you're like, oh God, like that was so terrible. Like I never want to go through that again, and that can turn to hatred. I sat across the table. It would have been about 18 months ago now from a gentleman called Dr. Aria. And he spoke very publicly, and he kind of went viral when he was on Diary of a CEO, and he spoke about his wife coming into the kitchen and telling him that she not only was wanting to leave him, but she was pregnant with another man's baby. And he is a psychologist, and he used that as a experience where he was able to create a gap between the stimulus and the response. Because I thought my response to that would be wanting to burn the world to the ground, like the hurt and the pain that would cause and the hatred that I would generate. But if somebody like him can speak about forgiveness, moving on, wishing them the best, and going on to understand that that's part of the evolution of life and these things happen, I think that gives men grounds to be able to understand that these horrible, terrible things can happen, but it's not fatal, it's not final, and in fact that you can leave it behind and move on in a way that's positive. Like, you now speak about the positive roles that men can lead. You're not speaking about, oh, all women are going to cheat on you and ruin you and try and take half your net worth, and it's a terrible position to be in. But you could understand why somebody might do that. But if somebody like yourself can sit there, and Dr. Ari can sit and talk to me and have this conversation about that sort of thing, then I think that somebody who's gone through a much lesser experience where maybe the girl they went out with at school has cheated on them when they've gone away to university, you're thinking, okay, there's bigger things than this. Move on, deal with it, and try and find the right woman, another good person who isn't like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? This is more of a common women thing where they have abusive partners again and again and again, and then a nice guy asks them out. Like, we're not talking about weak nice, like male feminist, a not actual decent man, lawyer, like good hardworking family man, asks them out and they'll go, he's boring. It quite often, like you said before, they repeat the trauma again and again, and then it's your fault. But if you can move on from that easily. If you still hate your ex again and again, to be honest with you, you're not over them. You're not over your ex. If you hate your ex and think about them all the time, that fucking slut, that bitch, you're not over them. Same with my husband, my ex-boyfriend, he's a bastard, I hate them. You're not over them. You know you're over them when you can sit across the table with them and not hate them, but they're basically a stranger. You had to pass them and they're just like another person.
You're creating distance.
Good for them, do you know what I mean? I don't, my ex-wife, I don't have any hatred towards her. The situation wasn't correct. I moved away from it, we moved away from it, and I wish her the best. Do I want it to be happy or sad? It's neutral to me.
Indifferent.
Indifferent, to say, give an idea, whoever it is, someone in another room. Would I want them to be unhappy? No, I want them to be happy. It's like that. Like, just indifferent, really.
Yeah, I want to share a quote with you. No one deserves to be praised for kindness if he does not have the strength to be bad. And that's from a French philosopher called, and I'll try to butcher this, La Rochefoucauld. And I've been reading a lot of him recently, and I'll learn to pronounce his name better for future podcasts. But that whole piece of being capable of anger and aggression and destruction, but being able to rein it in, is something that's very important for modern men, because there's an element of being neutered and not being capable of these things. And, a male feminist, for example, I'm like so nice and so kind. Well, actually, you're not capable of anything else. Whereas if you're a powerful, strong man and you're in that horrible situation and you are capable of burning the world to the ground, but you choose not to instead, that is virtuous.
If you're someone that is not capable of violence and you're always kind, the nice guy, you're not really nice. You're just pathetic. That's the truth. If you're capable of being blunt, putting your hand through someone's skull, and you have that physical capability, but you choose to be nice, that's nice. People that are super, super wealthy, but are still nice to everyone and kind and treat the way to respect, that's nice. People that have this, they say they're the nice guy, usually they're doing that because they're actually scared. An example would be the last 4 years during COVID. Exact example of what happened. I think that's what we can move on to. Is the last 4 years, the nice guy, well, where did that lead us? The nice guy. An example would be, any of my friends are strong, masculine men, look after their family and guide their family. The COVID, what happened the last 4 years, look, whether it was deliberate or not, it's not really relevant. But the fact is, the virus was not as bad as they first made out. The fact is, the vaccine that came out was not a vaccine. It was supposed to stop symptoms, not stop the spread. So when you tell everyone that they need it to travel or to go to work, that is corruption. It is corruption. People said to me, how do you know something was wrong? Well, I thought the vaccine was great when it came out. But when they started mandating and saying people had to have it to go to work, then I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Alarm bells.
Alarm bells. Because they said it stops the virus, what's it called? Sorry, the symptoms, not the spread. So it is not the same thing as a tuberculosis vaccine or a polio vaccine. And the truth is, what happened in the last 4 years about strong men, the reason why we got to that stage was because of weak men. Men did not stand up to the nonsense. Women are more emotional than men. Women are ruled by fear, most women. I would almost go to all women. What happens, and when men and women are together, a woman is more emotional, so they provide an emotional part to the household, which is great. They provide nurturing. The man is logical, so the man protects the family. The man in that kind of situation is supposed to protect the family. Your wife is going on and on about literally, if I don't have the vaccine, I won't go to work. We're going to kill our grandma if we don't have the vaccine. The guy's supposed to step in logically and without emotion go, no, it will not kill your grandma. It doesn't stop the spread. You're not having the vaccine. You're young and healthy. You don't need a COVID vaccine because you've had COVID. Nothing to do with the conspiracy of this, just a fact, a medical fact. When the vaccine came out, I went to my doctors, my friends, who are consultants, not junior doctors, not the crazy people, kid doctors, be very blunt, the consultants have been working in the NHS for 20, 30 years.
Not the ones that were doing TikTok dances.
Correct, yeah. Go into that in a minute. But anyway, so I would ask them, do I need the vaccine? They said, no, because you've had COVID-19, you have antibodies, you're protected. Simple.
Just on that, James, at the start, if you were looking to book a vaccine appointment, you couldn't go if you'd had COVID within like a particular period. Now that got scrapped.
Yes.
But the goalpost moved continually as we'll get to it. And people now will speak more about it, but people like you and I who were pushing against it then were deemed bonkers at that point in time. But a lot of people are now putting their head above the parapet and realizing we're correct. But they'll fall for the next the next round as well.
50% fall for it again, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but you're completely correct. And we sent each other a reel this morning when we were on our way to the podcast studio, as we've been DMing a lot, and I really do value the conversations that we have. But the US has just released its final report from the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, and one of the findings is that substantive evidence that it originated in a lab in Wuhan. Previously, you spoke about that. Deplatformed Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Deplatformed.
Your platform completely.
Horrific. Lockdowns cause significant harm to mental health, education, and the economy with limited long-term benefit. The protection offered by prior infection natural immunity was underestimated and largely ignored in advance in earlier policies, correct? And that the vaccination was ineffective in stopping the spread of the virus, but has some efficacy, which was important with regards to reducing the symptoms or severe cause of illness and effect from the virus itself. All of which people were saying during this period, but shouted down very, very heavily and described as conspiracy theorists. So I do feel vindicated on some level by reports like that, and I think reports like that will always actually water down how hard-hitting the evidence is. Like, look at the pandemic report from the UK. Didn't look at all at the response and instead looked at just most nonsensical measures.
What about the fact that the billions of pounds we spent were paying it back through taxpayers' money? Why aren't people angry? What about the fact that Boris Johnson and his cronies were partying while everyone was locked up? What about the fact that people didn't cancer treatment and died from cancer, but only COVID-19 patients were allowed to be seen? What about the fact that people said you're a monster having your gym open during COVID and only COVID patients matter? I was killing people, yet my mum didn't get cancer treatment. Cancer spread everywhere. I watched her rot to death and shit herself in nappies. Sorry, mum, for listening to this, but I had to deal with that. And some bastards were saying to me, literally going to me like, well, look at this, look at that. You don't even care about people. I said, what about my mum? I have to live watching my mum rot to bones, changing a nappy. And they literally tell me, I said, how does it affect you? And they go, well, I said, you got furloughed from my taxpayers' money because I had to still work, have a business. I had to leave the country because the tax is so high. I had my mum die, and you're saying it affected you. And the other one, it's not affected me, Colin. They'll go, I don't want to talk about it now. I said, we're going to talk about it now. And what you're just saying that we need to talk about it now. And the truth is, it's so horrific what's going on. I'm very, very happy there's strong enough people to come out and talk about this. But as soon as someone says that people that apologise for how they behaved, I respect them and go, you know what? Let's put it behind us. But the ones who don't want to talk about it, I literally think they're worse than rats. They're vile pigs, literally watching what they've done, and they just bury their head in the sand.
Because they'll be the ones that enforce the next thing that comes that will remove more of our freedoms, that become more totalitarian.
They're the ones who would have put the Jews in the gas chambers. They're the ones who would have
in Germany, 100%.
They're the ones who would have literally whatever, because that's not the only what's called horrific
example. Yeah,
exactly correct. Just anything. They're the ones who would have whatever the government said they would have done.
Well,
killing whatever race it may have been, whatever.
We had a little bit of that during the pandemic, where people were snitching on their neighbours for breaking restrictions. And you brought up there about your mum, and I always value how you speak about that. My mother had breast cancer in 2018, thankfully fully in remission. But during the lockdown periods, her screenings were more limited. And I remember and my parents were a little bit indoctrinated because they'd grown up reading the Telegraph, watching BBC News. Dad got a letter because of a respiratory condition that he was a high-risk patient, so he was rattled by it.
I get that, though, to be honest.
And I'm so angry that they were manipulated in that way, because my brother and I were able to be free-thinking. We were detached. We were living away from the household. We don't really watch the news. We were reading on X.
Constantly watching mainstream media.
Yeah, we were able to detach. But the fact that my mother couldn't receive her regular checkups and get support made my blood boil, because it was not and should never have just been about a flu at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's normal flu.
And it caused tremendous issues for cancer patients, and God knows what else down the line, because we're still seeing the long tail effects.
Long-term effect. And remember this, not about my mum, I'm talking about the millions of people that are going to die from other illnesses because they didn't get screened. And I just find it incredible watching people just eat up, lap it up. And like you said before, the problem is, it's not just that, they'll lap up the next thing. And the issues with the amount of money stolen, the amount of backhanders given, the amount of contracts given out with Pfizer, Moderna, et cetera, and people just go, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm like,
Michelle Monin and PPE, insane.
Insane.
And that's one of the problems that I have. So you and I would be probably accused of being red-blooded capitalists, and you're out in Dubai, you're doing fantastic, and you've got your businesses that you're growing. I am not a corporatist. And that's what we've become. We've got these huge multinational conglomerates that are swallowing up everything. I want people who went to university for the first time in their family and started a business and have grown it and have turned over 6 figures for the first time, turned over 7 figures for the first
amazing,
time.
Right?
Employed people. That's what gets me excited.
And employees have the same thing for their families. That's what you want.
Of course, yeah. And a rising tide raises all ships.
Yep.
Let's do that. But instead, we have these huge multinational organizations being funneled money away from the middle classes, away from the working class, not the workless working class, which we appear to have in the UK growing in numbers as well. That's what I want us to focus on, and that has been taken away terribly.
It's gone. The fact is, the reason that's happening is 2 reasons. Well, number one being the tax is too high. And the tax is that high because we're paying for people to scrounge and do nothing. Basically, you have people in the middle being squashed and squashed and squashed. You have scroungers and super wealthy in the UK, and particularly in London, that's all you have. And this thing about immigration, people going on and on about it, going like, you're a racist. Every single one of my friends who's an immigrant, Pakistani, Indian, whatever immigrant they may be, Jamaican, agrees with me. It's the white, wispy white girl literally going on about you're a racist. I'm like, no. You have 700,000 people come in last year legally, right? Not even legally. We can't cope. It's not to do with whether they should come in or not. We can't cope. It's not our responsibility. You have 700,000 people coming in who we need to feed or financially look after. It doesn't make any sense. When we're already struggling that much, we can't deal with it.
Yeah,
it's not to do with it.
And you say that as somebody that came from an Irish father and a Japanese mother who came to the UK to better themselves. It was a land of opportunity, somewhere that they were able to build, and that was the case, but that's being removed now.
They did, because they could, and they did. And they provided jobs. And they weren't leeches. They literally went to private school. We had private healthcare. My parents paid millions and millions of pounds of tax. You can't even fathom the amount they paid in tax. And what have they got back? Nothing. I mean, the roads, well, they barely work anyway. They didn't go to a state school, because they didn't need to, which my parents are good. They went, you know what, we can pay for it, you go to private school. They don't use the NHS unless they needed to, because they can, which is great, that's fine. But then what are they getting back? What are people that worked hard got back? Nothing. They've got basically people hating them because they're bad. They're rich, they're bad.
Yeah. I've had Daniel Priestley on the podcast last time I was in Dubai, actually, and he was sharing on LinkedIn that in order to be a net contributor to the UK, you must pay over 17.5k per annum in income tax. Very few people do that. Very few, which is frightening. The tax burden is pretty much taken up by the top 5% of earners, and everyone else is actually a net recipient. And that's not a problem. Like, you can be a net recipient, but there's a net recipient who has never paid tax, has no
Hates you as well.
Has no path or likelihood of ever paying tax. And that's where I think the UK is skewing itself in terms of the number of people that are going to be net beneficiaries of the system for the foreseeable future, in fact their whole life.
Well, exactly like you said before, people that are dependents versus people that actually providing. And the dependents are getting larger and larger, mixture of things. People that just don't work or have mental health issues that don't work, which you're going to have some. That the thing about the benefit system, I agree in benefits. People that say they don't believe in the benefit system, I agree with it. You have to have people that genuinely can't work, have serious mental health issues. I feel sorry for them. It must be torture. But a lot of that are people who just don't want to work. But if people are genuinely disabled, that can't work, genuinely between jobs, can't find a job, of course they should be looked after. I'm very happy to give my tax. I'm sure you're the same, right? But the point is, that's not the majority of it is. And the problem is dependents are getting larger and larger to the point where the tiny bit at the top are providing for everyone. You know what's going to happen? They're able to move. These people have moved to places like the US with lower tax. They've moved to Dubai. They've moved to Australia. They've moved to other places. What's the pull of staying in the UK? High crime, violence, everyone hating each other, bad weather. I don't understand and everyone hating you because you have money. Like, what's the point? Why would you stay there anymore?
Do you know what? I get asked this question a lot as well, and I'm still there as people that listen to the podcast know. I'm very patriotic. I believe Britain is a great country. I believe it's done great things across the world. People sometimes get triggered by when I say that.
So it has.
For centuries, and I won't apologise for our empire from that perspective. But the Britain that I know and love is being watered down and eroded from within. But I do feel somewhat a responsibility to stay and try and be a positive force. There's a finance writer that I've had on the podcast 3 times now, Andrew Craig, and he's a great guy. How to Own the World is one of the best investment books that a young British guy can buy to get themselves started and become financially in a position like I am, where I can escape some of the madness. Andrew texted me the other day and he was like, I feel so dispirited about where things are going. He just got published in the Telegraph talking about Rachel Reeves' latest round of taxes and how positive it's going to be, and he did a great job on that. But he actually texted me something really nice, and he was like, people like you and another chap that I know that hosts a podcast, you're a really positive force in the UK, and I hope that you stay and try and help. And I think there's so many horrible macro factors going on that make it really difficult, but on a micro level, I'm trying my absolute best to be a positive force for the people that listen to the podcast, for the people that tune into the content, the people that take action. And I get messages every week, and this week's been amazing with the Spotify Wrapped. I'm in the top 5 for so many people's podcasts, and they're listening to stuff that's genuinely helping them, and they're escaping the worst effects of the UK. But if the macro effects are so negative, I and much bigger creators than me are just a tiny ripple in the pond.
Well, this is the thing. I agree with you to a certain extent. One of my friends, Armin Malik, who went on his podcast, you know, surgeon, yeah, one of my friends.
He's from Glasgow, actually.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Forget he's from Glasgow. And he's Pakistani immigrant. But he goes, I'm British. And I love that. I love that. We have the only country in the world. Americans do. So that's not fair. Americans do. I love the fact we have that. That you're literally from anywhere, but you're still British. And that's what makes the UK special. And the US special as well, right? You're African American, whatever it may be, right? And I feel British. I am British, right? I'm not British bloodline, but I'm British. And the point I'm trying to say is...
You're also culturally British, which we can maybe get onto.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. What your values based on, yeah. I'm definitely culturally British. It's interesting you said that. I think about this a lot. I'm British. A lot of the values here actually are old-fashioned British, actually. They're brought here.
It's why I love it so much.
British, yes, British. I talk to Emiratis about this. Say, this is old-fashioned UK conservative British. It is.
And tell them... Do not let it go by any means. Please keep it.
I'm scared because they're nice. It will get crushed, unfortunately. People will take the piss and they'll be like, oh, come in. And they'll eventually just... But anyway, about the UK, yes, I do feel that way. Well, the truth is I do that anyway. I have a business, a gym in the... I pay much more tax than what that threshold was, to be very blunt. So I provide anyway. And yes, I do feel passionate about the UK going back to what it was. However, like we said before, most people that could get it back where it was, are leaving. Back in the 70s where the Labour government destroyed everything again, the same sort of cycle again. The reason why the UK went back to normal was because you had the people there, entrepreneurial stayed. Problem is people aren't staying this time. And yes, I do feel I want to stay and do the best I can, which I am with my business anyway. But I just think it's a sinking ship. And I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope it goes back to what it was. Yeah, early 2000s. Hand on heart would be the most amazing thing in the world if that happens. But it's not possible, logically.
I feel a duty. But the main reason I'm still there is because my mum and dad, we live 10 minutes walk from the family house.
Right? Yeah.
And it's so important to me. The only thing I'll say, and everyone that's in my ear about it, is Dubai is only a 6-7 hour flight away.
Short.
You could do it. But, oh my goodness, like, I want Britain to be great again.
Can I ask you a question, though? So the amount, it doesn't matter what you earn, but give me an idea. Say if you earn £200,000 a year.
Yep.
So you're paying, £80,000, £90,000 a year. Do you think £90,000 a year for someone is worth staying in the UK for? The answer is obviously no. And the second part about that is £90,000 a year. People say their parents, etc. You could bring them first class every month. You bring them every few months, 3 months. Business class every month.
Give them an amazing experience out here. I could go back plenty as well.
Correct.
And the way you structure your visa and your residency here, you can do that on a basis that's more
you can
regular
go back
than that.
You go 3 months a year in the UK, which is plenty anyway, which I don't use anyway. So the point I'm trying to say is literally people can go back. Look, it's up to anyone individually, but people saying the parent, I get it as well. Look, I'm lucky or unlucky. My dad is my only sort of relative I'm close to, right? Relatively close to. My mum isn't there. I have my auntie, but she's Japanese. She even who listens, she barely talks English. But the point I'm trying to say is I don't have that much of a pull anymore. For you have your parents, and it's an amazing life right around the corner. Your parents, lovely. Yeah. You'll have your kids. Have
but more and more of my friends are leaving. At least 3 or 4 have left in the last 12 months. And so I'm seeing firsthand, and these are not millionaires. These are guys that are earning between 50 to 100 grand a year, and they're the upper end for their age group between 25 to 35, and they're aspirational, but they're fleeing. It's not just the 9,500 millionaires that left the UK. It's the next generation of millionaires that have the potential to get there. They're leaving as well, and that hits me so hard. Something I've not shared publicly before, but I'm very comfortable doing it with you, James, is come the next election cycle. In the same way that, and I've got no delusions of my influence, but in the same way that Rogan and Schultz and Lex Friedman played a role in the election of Donald Trump, I want podcasts like mine and others in my demographic to play a role in helping the UK elect somebody that can make a real difference and try and turn us back. It's a long way away. I'm sure the podcast will be bigger and even stronger by that point in time, but I want us to be that platform to maybe keep young men more politically engaged so that they do use their vote properly. This time, or what was it, 2029 probably it's going to be. I want my podcast and I want others like me to try and play a role.
It's incredibly important. Of course it is. You say it will be bigger by then anyway, but it's incredibly important. And the reason why Donald Trump got in was because of, I would say, people say Joe Rogan. The real reason is we both know this. We know how he got in. Was it Elon Musk and Twitter? That's the only way he got in. Because people who were brainwashed saw what was going on in X and then realised, shit, I've been brainwashed. And they're basically somewhere that actually has freedom of speech. If we didn't have freedom of speech somewhere, people would have just been brainwashed, and that would have been it. And I reckon if Kamala Harris got in, I don't mean this lightly, I spoke to my father yesterday about this, it would have been the end of the Western world. It would have been the end. We were moving into a communist era in the West.
Well, some of the language used, that whole, what was the daft phrase she used? To leave behind what has been before or something like that. That's from Marx. Eric Weinstein revealed that on the Modern Wisdom podcast. He looked into the wording, and that is terrifying that somebody in the mainstream is using that terminology. AOC in the US, she uses similar sort of Marxist
nothing, be happy, all this stuff.
Yeah, phraseology as well, which is terrible. I feel like we're really putting the world to rights, James, but something that I always think is important with my podcast is that we empower people to some extent to do the things that they can do, that will remain within the range of control. Locative control. What are some of the habits or behaviours that you would encourage young men to have as we go into 2025?
Number one, I'd start with getting into shape. Physical shape is the number one, because that's something you can control yourself. What you put in your mouth, what you eat, and going to the gym, going for a run, whatever it may be, get into shape. I promise you this as a man, the most important thing for you first is getting into shape. If you get into shape, you feel good, you look in the mirror, feel good about yourself, you'll feel more confident, you'll earn more money, you feel better about yourself, you'll attract more women, you'll have better friends around you, a better friendship circle. Every single part of your life will improve. It's the same actually with alcohol, right? I don't say don't drink. I'd have a drink maybe once a year. right? But say I don't drink or do drink. Right?
We're very similar.
Yeah, just because I don't. You know what? It's probably the same as you. I don't want to say I'm teetotal because I think you're making a point that way. I just don't drink because I choose not to. Then I'll have one if I want
It's
one.
become more acceptable now, though, to be alcohol-free for long periods without the social pressure that used to exist before.
Yeah, no one really cares anymore. I've never had anyone go, "You're boring, you don't drink." No one really does that anymore, I don't think. The example, anyway, would be about this. Another one, sorry, would be not to drink. I haven't met anyone ever who stopped drinking and their life has got worse.
Yeah, fact.
0%. And every single person that tried to belittle me, saying not to drink or I don't drink, has ended up having a mental breakdown. I don't mean that lightly. Every single person, I repeat that, Colin, I can think of them in the top of my head right now. I can see the picture of them and I know who they are after listening to this. Made fun of me being boring for not drinking. They had a mental breakdown. Were crying on the phone to me. I'm having a mental breakdown, went mental.
The people that gave you the most pushback were probably the people that were using it as a cope the most, and you choosing to opt out shone a light on their issue. And that caused them the most problems. So they are actually statistically the most likely people to have a really, really bad experience with alcohol. They're the people that need to go abstinent the most.
They're the ones that actually need to go out. Look, I'm not saying everyone does, but I would start with that and your life will improve. So number one would be get into shape, join a gym, get strong, lift some weights, do some sort of cardio, whether that's whatever you love, cardio, rowing, whatever it may be. Number two would do a martial art. Do some sort of combat sport, learn how to fight as a man. I would go and do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Thai box or wrestle. And then on top of that, as I said before, would be you'd find friends from that. You'll find friends from that, and then build a business with doing something you love. You might not earn money from the beginning, but eventually you might be able to monetize it long term.
Yeah, that purpose piece is a big part for me. Having something that you find fulfilling. And we were talking before we hit record about my career in the sales world, and a lot of young men that message me saying they're lost in a role post-university or they're lost in a role even before they go to university, I'll say, well, have you considered working in sales? Because it's very easily measurable, particularly people like me that like the gym. I can look at my abilities that I've got from when it comes to training and lifting and understand that what goes in has an element of, like, I can see the pathway to what comes out. So the inputs in food, training, sleep, nutrition all has downstream from it an effect on what I look like and how I feel. Sales is very similar. The number of calls you make, the number of DMs you send.
Algorithm-based, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you can work on the quality of it. So the quality of my food can get better. Oh, guess what? My gut feels better. The quality of my training gets better. Oh, guess what? I've grown a bit more muscle from the sets that I did do because my repetitions were of a higher quality. I think roles like that can be really, really valuable. And I really believe, as you say, building a business is something that you love. It gives you that positive feedback loop for a lot of the time that you spend on your working. If you spend 40, 50 hours a week doing something that is soulless and you don't like or don't enjoy, you best be paid a shit ton of money so that you can spend an amazing time outside of those 40, 50 hours in your week, because that's quite a large percentage. But instead, why not try and build something on the side that you can see yourself doing longer term that gives you that positive feedback loop, and let's hope one day that it monetizes to the level you want it to.
You don't mind working hard because you enjoy it, right? And there's a byproduct. It's like the earning money thing you said. If you have a job that you hate, it better pay you enough money that you can retire early. And I don't have a problem with that either. I think people have this obsession with saying money does matter. If you earn huge amounts of money doing what you do, if you're skilled up to the point where you do something you hate, but you earn huge amounts of money, do it. Don't quit that job. Do it for a while. Put the money away, then open the business you love. That's
some of the things that we can do within our locus of control. If you reflect on your experience at 34 years of age, is there any like core skill that you wish you worked on earlier?
I wish I did things more efficiently with certain things, but no. I did actually everything I wanted to do, to be honest with you. So in martial arts, I admit this, I wish I fought professional MMA younger. I wish I did that younger. I wish I competed more in mixed martial arts. I would have loved to try to get in the UFC when I was young and just did it full-blooded, did it. I admit that. But I still did the right things. I trained the martial arts, worked hard. So in terms of what I did, no, not really, nothing. I went to uni, no. Zero regrets. And so I could have worked differently. Perfect. But no, I don't have any regrets what I did. I did put the work into what I love. Like, no, I don't. Till zero.
What is an area of work or things that are hard that you feel that you can handle better than most people?
Everything. Only dead in the eyes, everything.
Why do you think that is?
Because I'm not emotional. Because I can detach emotion from what I need. So an example would be, proof of the pudding, right? So when something bad happens emotionally, I get divorced or my mum died, etc., I can completely emotionally detach from it and realize that's horrible. But me getting angry and self-destructing will not help anything. They'll make the situation worse. And I know a lot of very wealthy people, and very successful people. And it sounds arrogant and narcissistic. I'm able to better than anyone I know. Able to complete, and people will tell you, know me, emotionally detached from it.
Is that nature and nurture, or one or the other?
Bit of both, but more nurture, actually. More nurture. I used to be quite emotional growing up. I think that changed with the age for everyone anyway. I think we do get less emotional as men, particularly. You get less emotional as you get older. You'd watch your father, right, and something very bad happen. You're like, how the hell is he coping with that? He probably isn't, but he doesn't show any emotion, right? You learn that. That's a learned skill, I think, as well. And that is the most important thing, is to be able to, for becoming good at anything, realize things aren't linear. Shit's going to happen. Nobody cares. And you're responsible. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to do something about it. And I have absolutely no empathy for people self-destruct. And it sounds awful, I just don't care. If someone goes, my mum died, I started drinking loads and it destroyed my life, started gambling, I'm like, not an excuse. You're waiting for that excuse that something bad happened. You're waiting, anything bad's happened in your life, and to jump on the excuse. And no one's strong enough. As a friend, no one's strong enough to go, say your mum died, right? Friends aren't strong enough mainly to go like, well, yeah, but you're still the one destroying your life. I've had a few friends actually who say their mum and dad got very ill, and they said, really lovely. They're going like, I respect how you dealt with it. I really want to drink. I want to go out and start partying. What did he do in that situation? I said, well, I just thought me partying and drinking puts you in a worse mental state to deal with the problem. So actually, and if your mum and dad looked at you, say mum died and they looked at you, your mum and dad need you now, or if they're ill, you're the one who's supposed to be the adult. That's a lack of respect for your parent. Imagine if your mum's dead and they see you drinking fucking hookers, whatever it may be, really.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lack of respect to your mum who died. What your mum would want you to see is genuinely getting on with your life.
Yeah, if you're going to have a coping mechanism, make it a positive one. Exercise, business, giving to others and supporting.
Yeah, like
positive traits.
Yeah, exactly. So when my mum, I knew for a while my mum was ill. It was about 3 or 4 years. When it got to the point where she was very, very ill in hospital, dying like last week or so, the day she passed away in the morning, we're going to, but she died. My dad came in, burst into tears. Of course, remember for him, it's not his mum, it's his life partner. My dad was 79 at the time, right? Awful. I literally had a coffee, went to train, went back to work, and people were like, why at work? I said, well, what else am I going to do? Sit and watch a wall and cry? I don't know, it's going to help anything. My coping mechanism is to talk about it and go and train, and literally just build the things and control things I can control is my coping mechanism. So
powerful. Last question for you, James. What would need to happen before you turn 40 for you to feel successful?
Yeah, very good point. Number one would be to compete more in jiu-jitsu. I want to have at least 5 professional MMA fights. I want to win or medal at the European Championships at black belt adult level in grappling, in jiu-jitsu. And I want to emotionally married, have children, 2 kids, if I can, 2 children. Bought my house here, so that's on that list already. And then also, last one would be to have a business passively pay me $1 million a year, repeatedly.
So financially, you have that freedom to spend your time more how you want.
You put it perfectly. It's not to buy anything. It's literally to train more. Do more of this.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not to buy things.
There's 4 currencies, and people have heard me speak about this before. There's freedom of location, there's freedom of time, there's purpose, and then there's money. You need to tick all those boxes with your businesses to really be truly fulfilled. And I think it's amazing to watch you working towards.
I'm getting for those things. Yeah, I'm definitely getting to those things, and I pretty much have those things. Yeah.
James, I've had tremendous time. I'm sure we'll do another pod when I'm back out in Dubai again.
Love that.
If people want to keep up to date with you, where should they head towards?
Sure. So my Instagram is James Cooper BTX, and the website for the gym is bodytransformationlondon.com. But mainly my Instagram, James Cooper BTX.
Beautiful stuff. Both of those will be linked in the show notes. Thank you to you, James.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.